Awesome. Thank you, Chair Zimmer.
Calling to order the meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee for SCTA RCPA. As always, we will start with introductions, which I will do the first run through. From SCTA, we have Shauna, Drew, and Chris and Dana. From Katati, oh, sorry, David. From Katati, we have Craig Scott. From Petaluma, Ken Eichstead. From Sebastopol, Mario Landeros. From Roner Park, Edie Takata. Steve Bertelbaum. Steve Urbanik and Hunter from the county. Joanne Parker from SMART. Nancy Adams from the city of Santa Rosa, Alejandro Perez from Windsor, and Oriana Hart from the city of Sonoma. I think I got everyone there, so we can move on to public comment. Do we have any? Yes, Steve?
Yes, thank you. I have been looking into the effects of electric vehicles recently, and a number of the posts are indicating that once you get an electric vehicle, you've got to drive it for several years before it is equal to surpassing an internal combustion vehicle, and that's mostly because of the embedded carbon in the batteries. But the long-range view of this, in order to get to our emissions goals, is that we have to reduce our driving and our greenhouse gases to about 12% of what they are today. And I think that means that in a decade or so, people are going to be converting to mini vehicles rather than the SUVs that they're driving today. And I think the implication for those who are designing roads is that we need to take a look at what's happening in places in the United States that rely on golf carts for people to drive around because the vehicles may be that size and unable to compete with trucks in an accident. And the Netherlands has a good road structure now for folks that are driving mini vehicles. So that's just something to put in the back of our minds as we're looking at projects for the future. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the future brings. Moving on to item number.
Steve, just a question. Are you actually in a train, or is that a photo behind you?
That's my background, but I wish I was in the train, yes.
Approval of meeting minutes from January 27th, 2021. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, or noticing any errors? Seeing none, we will pass that unanimously. On to item 4, the SB 743 update. Chris?
Yeah, I just have a short update on a couple of things this afternoon. So first, just wanted to update everyone on progress on the VMT reduction calculator. So we're making some good forward movement on that. We met with the steering committee group earlier this month in February and talked about place types and what mitigations would be included in the tool. So we actually have a place type map that's out for review right now. I'll put a link to that in the chat after my report. But the idea is the calculator is more appropriate for built up areas than very rural areas. So the map just kind of provides a look at where the calculator will be most useful. And when you look at the map, the gray areas, which are the very rural areas, are the areas where the calculator would be more advisory and has less research backup for the effectiveness of mitigation. So take a look at that. if you're interested. And on page, I think it's page 8 of the agenda packet. Yeah, page 7 is the agenda from the last steering committee, and on page 8 is a list of the mitigations that we're looking at to include in the tool. So happy to take more comments on that as well. We've already received some from many of you. So that's kind of the list we're working with of types of mitigations that will be included in the tool. So we're getting the group back together again in early March. The agenda right now is to kind of finalize that place type map and finalize the list of mitigation measures, and then set the Fair and Peers team loose on the tool and have them coded in. And we'll also be looking at a few different formats. So there's kind of the SANDAG Excel format, and Fair and Peers has another TDM mitigation tool called TDM Plus that's also an option. So we'll look at that as well at that meeting in March. Other SB 743 news I wanted to let you about includes some recent releases from Caltrans. They have a document, which I'll also link in the chat after my report. They have an SB 743 Environmental Essentials in Project Development and Delivery document that they've released, I believe, last week or early this week. And it just provides some narrative on things to consider as you're developing your projects as we move into the new environment, looking at VMT when projects are developed. So it provides kind of a look at the guidelines that Caltrans staff will be using to evaluate different project descriptions. And then they're also planning on releasing a document looking at mitigation. So focusing on research and effectiveness of different VMT mitigation. And then finally, a document that's looking at project management and implementation. So how to kind of manage projects considering VMT and GHG reduction. So those last two documents aren't out yet. Those are still kind of in process, but I'll provide a link to that first document on project development and delivery. So yeah, that's what I have for VMT and SB 743 right now. Happy to answer any questions.
Looks like we have a question from Nancy.
Hey, Nancy, what can I answer?
Yeah, so just it sounds like you have a date for the next committee meeting. What is that? You said early March.
We don't have it set yet. We're still gathering responses to the doodle poll. So yeah, hope to get that scheduled by early next week.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Yep. All right, so I'll go ahead and drop a couple links in the chat, but yeah, happy to answer any questions anytime you all may have about VMT, the travel model, and SB 743. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chris. Seeing no more questions, moving on to item 5, TFCA call for projects, Dana. And I think this is on page 9 of the packet.
Yes, thank you, Larry. So this is the fiscal year 22-23 call for projects for the Transportation Fund for Clean Air. This is an annual program, and we distribute the funding using a guaranteed amount portion for each of the 3 local bus operators. And then we have a competitive portion that's open to the jurisdictions for projects for the jurisdictions within the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. So Healdsburg, Cloverdale, and kind of the northern unincorporated county are not eligible for this funding. We this year are doing the competitive portion a little bit different. Normally we first ask the smaller jurisdictions to apply, and then if we don't get applications that are eligible for the full amount of that competitive portion, we do a second call for projects and open it up to the county, Santa Rosa and Petaluma, who otherwise would just get funding for their transit. But this year we're actually asking for all applications at one time. We will still prioritize any eligible applications from the smaller jurisdictions that do not run bus transit. But we just want to do this in one process. And We may also consider programming funding for the next fiscal year for that competitive portion if we see the need and eligible projects come in. So generally, projects that can be applied for through this funding program are projects that reduce vehicle trips, bicycle infrastructure and bicycle parking, alternative fuel vehicles. We've funded some arterial management, signal timing projects in the past. And then infrastructure improvements for trip reduction and engine replacements or retrofits. Applications are due on March 21st. And we will be taking the proposed program of projects to the transit TAC and the TAC at the April meetings, and then to our board in May. Funding usually is available as soon as the contracts are completed, which will be over the summer or early fall. And the application, including that project application form in Word and the cost effectiveness worksheets are all on our funding page of the SCTA website, which is linked in the in the call for projects memo, as well as the guidance for the program as well. So I would be happy to take any questions anybody might have on this call for projects.
Mario?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. Appreciate that. Looks like you said there was a call for projects memo issued. I don't know who at Sebastopol may have received it, but would you forward that to me, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Mario, who would be are there people that
Oh, yeah,
should
sure.
be receiving this regularly that I should make sure are on my list?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you send it to Tony Bertolero? That'd be
Sure.
fine. And I'd like to, I think for now, that's fine. I'll forward you any other persons that are needing to be looped in, but for now, that's good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Nancy?
Hey, Dana, just a question. I'm working with Bjorn on this program for Santa Rosa. So, and I asked him to check on the eligibility of e-bikes for for our city crews to use. So I'm curious because the program allows for alternative vehicles, like electric vehicles, I think, or whatever, or hybrids or whatnot. So I just wondered why e-bikes aren't eligible. So it's just a question.
Yeah, so we have actually had some conversations with the Air District about this because you can use this funding for electric fleet vehicles for municipalities. The rules around this funding were written well before e-bikes existed. And they have kind of tried to work that into the framework of the Air District policy for this fund source and have really not been able to make that work. It's something that the Air District is interested in and aware of, but they just have not been able to make it fit within the within the program language. So, there are eligible, you can use it for a bike share program that's accessible to the public, but not for purchasing electric bikes for fleet use.
Okay, thanks, Dana.
Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. So the city of Cotati, we have a signal timing project that's out to bid right now. Is there any way to get apply for funding for it retroactively, or would we have to just recall the bid and maybe hold off on it so the timing with the funding is right?
You would not be able to apply for funding retroactively. It would have to be for a future project and make sure that this program is credited on any bid documents for that project. This funding does also require some analysis of air pollution reduction, both before the project and after the project. So there's some reporting involved.
Great, thank you.
Any other, Mario?
Yeah, so now that I am in like where Larry used to be, where he was eligible, and now Larry's where I used to be, where we weren't eligible. It's a learning curve for me here. Guidelines for those pollution requirements for depending on the project. Are those going to be identified in the guidelines? Are there links to that? Where could I get that?
Yeah, so the guidance on our, I'm just gonna, if I could, Drew, just share where everything is on our website.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Great. Bear with me a second. Let me share my screen. All right, so on the funding page, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. The funding page of the SCTA website, there's a section on the Transportation Fund for Clean Air. And here there are the TFCA County Program Manager Fund policies. That document includes instructions for filling out the cost effectiveness forms. And those instructions really actually start way down here in Appendix X. The rest of the guidance will show you what your cost effectiveness needs to be and the kind of rules around the funding, but this Appendix H has the specific instructions for each project type for the cost effectiveness worksheets. So I'm now going to go back to this funding page and show you that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 worksheets that you would use for your, one of which you would use for your application, depending on the project type. So there's one for arterial management, electric vehicle infrastructure, trip reduction, and then there's 2 different ones for vehicles, depending on the class of the vehicle. So those are Excel workbooks, and with the kind of yellow cells that you would actually fill out according to the guidelines in that Appendix H of the TFCA County Program Manager Fund Policies document.
Great, thank you.
And I am happy to answer questions about applications as you're going through it. They can be a little bit complicated if you haven't done it before.
Good to know. I have a feeling I'll have questions. Thanks.
And Mario, I'll throw in too, what I found, and granted, it's been a while since I've done it, but certain projects are easier to run through the calcs because it's kind of set up for that. And when you deviate from it, you're having to make a lot of assumptions and sometimes guesses about the vehicle miles traveled, the percentage uses of bicycles, or those types of things to calculate the greenhouse gas reductions. So it isn't as black and white as we engineers typically would like it to be.
Now I could understand that the worlds we're getting into. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate that. Good insight.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. That actually reminds me, just one more thing to note is that this year, the project information form, which is the Word document piece of the application, asks for a lot more detail on project assumptions. So kind of all the assumptions that you're making that go into that cost effectiveness workbook need to be documented well in that project information form. So they ask for a lot more detail now. So just a heads up.
Seeing no more questions on TFCA, Dana, would you like to jump into the TDA3 call for projects?
Yeah, so starting on page 13 of your agenda packet is the Transportation Development Act, Article 3 call for projects for fiscal year 22-23. And this is also an annual funding source that is specifically for bicycle and pedestrian projects for construction of those projects. And we distribute the funding based to all local municipalities within the county based on their share of the population. There's a table on page 14 of the agenda packet that has each jurisdiction listed with the funding that is added into this from the source for that's estimated for this fiscal year, and then your carryover from prior years. So any funds that are not used in any given year can be carried over into future calls for projects. We also do allow jurisdictions to advance funds for up to 2 years of their projected entitlements for the current year. So this does allow some of the smaller cities to move forward with projects given the relatively small amount of funding that's added into their pot of funding for each year. So similarly, the application for this is linked on the SCTA funding page, and there's also a direct link in the call for projects to the funding application. Applications are due on March 14th. However, you do have some additional time to get board adopted resolutions to us, which is required for this funding program. Those will not be due until April 27th. So really we want the project applications on time so we can review them at our March CBPAC meeting. We'll also bring it to the TAC as an information item next month as well. But we have a little more time to actually get those council or board adopted resolutions. And this will also be going to the SCTA board in May, and funding will be available on July 1st. Project sponsors have 3 years to complete their projects, and we cannot do extensions. However, if a project comes in under budget or needs to be canceled, that funding will remain with that jurisdiction. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have about the TDA Article 3 program.
Mario?
Yeah, another quick question. You said that cities can request an advance for up to 2 years. Is that based on the new current funding? And then while the population distribution, I don't imagine it really changing within those 2 years, the funding source could change. What did I read? It was on, what was the base, the fund source? Top of my head here. It was a statewide quarter-cent sales tax.
Right.
You know, with economic times, volatility, and those numbers may change. How does that affect the advance requested?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we'll calculate the amount that you can advance funding based off of this year's estimate. However, we will track the funding continuously so that next year the total amount that comes to Sonoma County will be divvied up by the current population distribution. So And yes, these funds do go up and down depending on, sales tax revenues. But yeah, as you said, it stays relatively the same, and so does the population. But you wouldn't be, if your population goes up, you wouldn't get any less next year because you borrowed ahead. We track it continuously.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Ben?
Yeah, Dana, going back to TFCA, do we need board approval for that, for the application due 3/21?
Good question. You do not need board approval for the TFCA program. You do for the TDA 3 program.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dana. Seeing no more questions, we will move on to item 7, actually 7.1 and 7.2, Measure M. Shauna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Included in your agenda packet is the invoicing and obligation status for Measure M projects, as it is every month. The yellow and red are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to belabor it because you get to see it every month. But Measure M policies require that you either invoice within 6 months of obligation or ask for an extension. That's also true for your programmed funds. If you don't intend to program or if you are unable to program if you are unable to obligate in a year that you are programmed, then you can ask for an extension. So that one. And for 7.2, that is the maintenance of effort annual reporting status update. This is just a oral update. I wanted to let everybody know that we have received reporting from all of the jurisdictions, and we are working with the jurisdictions to verify the accuracy of the reporting, and we will bring something back to you next month. And the information that is reported, the final information that is reported will be taken to first to the TAC, then to the Citizens Advisory Committee, and then on to the SCTA Board of Directors, and that will go before them in May. That's that item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Being none, I will add that I like the new use of the streets and highways report. It makes it really quick to do your maintenance of effort reporting.
Actually, thank you, Mr. Chair, for reminding me. I did send out an email earlier this week to everyone with the reported information. Everybody should have received that email to verify the numbers that we have received. Please do look it over and let us know if there's anything that needs to change.
All right, moving on, 8.1, inactive federal obligation status, which is also in the agenda packet, I think on page 17.
I can share my screen if that makes it easy for everyone. Let me do that real quick.
Nader looks like he's getting ready.
All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. A little bit bigger,
Yes.
it's pretty tiny. There we go.
Yeah, we can see Shauna.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
It's large enough. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm going to go to Sonoma and Roanoke Park first, and then we'll finish up with the county. So let's go to Oriana.
Hey, that's our Chase Street Bridge project. We have billed out for everything that we can, and we're waiting for more funding.
Oh, right. I do recall that. Thank you. On to Edie.
We have long finished that project and I need a final invoice, but before that I need to revise my E76 so I can get more than 64% back. I need 84% back. So I have a meeting with Ken next week, and we will move forward after that. They have a draft 3A with my ask to revise E76. So there you go. That's my
Great, thank you. And we move on to Nader.
Okay, the first one is the 32L0576. This has been canceled or deleted from the system. They created a new one. I don't know why they keep bringing it up in there. I brought it to Ken's attention, but he hasn't done anything. So
I don't think Ken can control it, but thank you. I will bring that up.
and I will send you the supportive documents to support your approach with them, because I do have, he gave me a copy of the cancellation of the funds. And the substituted one, they were an AC approval. So there is no way they can make it to the inactive list. For the project, the 5920, 138, this one, there is no funds available. They lapsed. So we cannot charge to it. The county is doing an RFP out of its own pocket to do feasibility study. 144, I think either an invoice has been submitted or in the process to be submitted for that one. 164, the issue of the PED. Ken finally, he moved the document to headquarters for approval. Once we get the PED, then we will be able to submit an invoice according to Ken. The 147 and 148, which is the last one on the list, we should be closing out those before June 2022, this year, the 30th of June. But apparently it's going to take a little bit longer, so we will be submitting an invoice by April in order to avoid the inactivity, to remove it from the inactive list, and also to encumber majority of the money before the lapsing funds is gone by June 30th due to the CWA agreement. 502, I think an invoice will be done. I don't know if they got to it yet, but will be submitted shortly. And the 151 is this one we need to close out. The final report will be submitting to Caltrans next week or the week
Month.
after.
It hasn't been submitted yet.
No, it has not. We have some minor tweak to it. I will be working with the Gloria because nobody replaced what's her name, Brittany Lobo at her position. So I'm dealing with the Gloria Mendoza on that one. So they're on my list, and I'm gonna make sure that I will send you a detailed information on these, the ones that to help you out when you reach out to Caltrans. I don't like my name to be written in something that I have no ownership of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Stop sharing. Concludes that item, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. On to 8.2 OBAG 3 update.
So in your packet is a collection of documents that should look very similar to last month. We shared a PowerPoint presentation and what we had from MTC last month. This should look very similar. However, there are 2 new pages in there, and I would draw your attention to them. They're on page 20, I think it's 28 and 29. Let me pull this up just to be sure.
28 is the schedule, which looks similar, but I don't know if the dates are the same as last time.
29, sorry, 29 and 30. So these 2 pages are the newest information that we got from MTC that tells us how they intend to proceed with implementing the local programs. And we're still working with MTC on what our targets will be, but we anticipate that they will probably be less than, based on how things are laying out, they will be less than what we had last time. So we're still waiting for the final data to come out from MTC, and then we will start working with the jurisdictions on the applications that we received for the 2021 funding program. The intent from MTC is to, I think they have about 375 million total to work with, but they are going to program, and if you take 35 million off the top of that, that goes to planning funds for each of the counties. And then they'll be working with 340K, but then our targets will be 120%. So that the target will be slightly higher than what we will actually be able to program. So we're working somewhere in the range of $340 million between the counties and spread out for targets based on a formula that is shown in your packet: 50% population, 20% RENA, and 20% housing production. I see Nancy has her hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Shauna. Thanks for the update and flagging the new information, because it's a lot to sift through. So I did want to reflect back on page, I don't know what page it is in your packet. Page 20, where you begin the discussion around the program estimates. So I just am curious, because it doesn't reflect the IIJA, which they anticipate to be more. So I wonder, it sounds like that would be a beneficial impact, rather than for the county getting less or equal to what we got the last cycle. So just a question.
So the question is, will they include the IIJA funds in OBAG 3? If I heard you correctly. And the
right, it doesn't really, yeah.
It does not currently reflect them, and everything we've been told is that it will not. The initial call for projects will be the amounts that I have just enumerated, and IIJA will come out as some additional funding later on.
Okay, and I guess then I would just wonder, how is that going to work with the whole programming exercise at a regional level? So that's, you may not know the answer to that.
We're all wondering, and we haven't heard yet. So we don't know. We've been asking those same questions, and I promise that we will bring that information to you as soon as we have it. We just don't have it yet.
Okay. Any other comments? That went faster than expected. On to the ATP update.
The ATP update is informational, Mr. Chair. These are the regional guidelines for the regional ATP program. You are probably aware that the CTC is finalizing their guidelines for cycle 6 and intend to approve those in March. And so what is included in your agenda packet applies to the regional program, which is as it works here. When you apply to ATP, you essentially apply to both programs. If you are unsuccessful in the statewide program, then your application is automatically submitted to MTC for consideration in the regional program. So these are the rules surrounding the regional program that are in your agenda packet.
Is there anything of note different in the regional program from the last time around?
David or Dana, do you want to help me out? I don't think there's anything significantly different. David?
Yeah, I think on both the regional guidelines and the statewide guidelines, there really haven't been any significant changes. I think people have been trying to keep things pretty status quo.
Thank you for that. And I'm also assuming the 500 million that was proposed in the grant and in the to be added to the ATP, which wasn't because of, you know, what was going on at the state. That is still, is it completely off the table at this point? That money would be awarded to cycle 5 or not?
So at this point in the governor's budget proposal, there's still that 500 million for the active transportation program. It's unclear whether that would be for the previous cycle 5 or for cycle 6 or a future cycle 7. At this point, it really depends on if that legislation is passed and the timing of it. Currently, the fund estimate that Caltrans and CDC staff have prepared do not include that 500 million since it has to reflect current state law. So we'll keep you apprised of any developments with that.
Okay, so I've been moving forward with the assumption that that money's not going to be available, and I will be applying again, but just keep praying. Thank you.
The focus that I've seen, Larry, the only real significant difference that I've seen, and I wouldn't say it's significant, but the focus is more on the engagement portion. They really want to make sure that you're engaged with the public on your projects. So documenting that, being able to discuss, you know, I mean, in the statewide guidelines, they're including things that we didn't have pre-COVID. So if you were able to hold outdoor meetings, or, you know, or if you were able to hold Zoom meetings, if you can show printouts of your chat where people were contributing ideas and information during public meetings via Zoom because of COVID, then those are acceptable documentation for your engagement portion.
Thank you. Yep, I've heard all the same stuff, so good to hear. On to item 9, assuming there are no other questions. SCTA programming and project activity report to the board. This is a big item.
Yeah, so this is just information sharing primarily. I hope it's helpful to the TAC. It is a monthly report that goes to the SCTA board to report out on projects and programming activities. You'll see the subheadings that it covers with regard to projects and programming. You know, certain things that will jump out at you that may be helpful. So Sean is sharing screen right now. Yeah, there's a few different things that jump out as helpful. The things that I would point out would be the 2021 funding program has a high level schedule. So that's something that we'll maintain in here and we'll update as needed. You'll be able to find it when it goes out to the board, or you'll be able to find it when you know, we share it at the TAC meeting. If the TAC finds this helpful, we'll continue to keep it as part of the TAC agenda. If this isn't something that's helpful to the TAC for discussion, information sharing, what have you, we don't need to include it in future TAC agendas. With that being said, other than the high-level 2021 funding program schedule, I'd also point out the raised NOFO that's out there. I do believe that Caltrans is resubmitting on SMART's behalf for SMART to Windsor, and you know, we'll continue to update this type of information when it comes available, so that those NOFOs, especially with all the ones that are going to be coming out with the bill or the IIJA, are available. And with that, it'll just be a informational item that, you know, anyone on the TAC's welcome to ask questions on, share their information on, and I hope you find it helpful.
Nancy?
Yeah, I lost my internet service. So James, I probably didn't hear all of your presentations, so sorry. So I think this is great. I always like clarity around, you know, all the things that you guys are working on and finding it in one place. So I think it's good. The only suggestion I would maybe ask is if you could put it on your website, that'd be great, because that's always, you know, a good source for me. I check your site for stuff, so it'd be maybe a good ad for your site. But yeah, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Anybody else submitting for raise? Anybody else want to talk about who's potentially submitting for ATP, that type of coordination?
Well, clearly Healdsburg is submitting for ATP. Roughly 10 mil of requests for a $12 million project, and we are going to get it. Pretty much guaranteed. But raise, I've just never seems fruitful.
It's a lot of
Yeah,
work, and Smart has a really good project.
Yeah, so, you know, James, we continually have that ongoing search for the Hearn interchange. So we're going to be doing the raise again this year. And we have some new energy with AECom. They've got some new consultant that's working with us. So maybe that new energy will bring us some boost. And we're going to look at some other options too for what we're going to ask for it. And yeah, and then to Larry, let's all wish Larry luck on the ATP. And I assured him that Santa Rosa wasn't going this year because we did well last year.
So
Larry,
Nancy
what's
on
the
Hearn,
project?
I'm sorry, Joanne, real quick question for Nancy before you jump in. On the Hearn interchange, do you know where you were failing on the raise? Is it the lack of more of a regional impact?
Well, you know, this is just me kind of talking like kind of offline here. I think it's a pretty competitive project, and I think we've got all the pieces together. We did actually talk about the regional element of it, you know, and I think we're going to enhance that. I think the new consultant there at AECom has some good ideas, which is, you know, he's going to incorporate that into the application. But you know, when these things the awards were released, it really had a lot to do with just the politics of it. And, you know, I was looking at a lot of press releases from around the country, and, you know, it's just good karma for all the politicians who lobby for these projects. So, you know, that's a big part of it, I think. But we're just trying our best. I know James and Sean have been helpful from SCTA perspective, helping us figure it out. But it's we always get so close, and we don't get there, right? So, and we haven't had a debriefing yet with them this year. We hope to have that. They promised us that they'd schedule all these debriefs, you know, in the next month or so. But I highly doubt it will be before these applications are due, which is in mid-April. So, you know, we do the best we can and just hope for the best, Larry.
Yep. Joanne?
I may have missed it, Larry. What's your project for ATP?
It is a road diet protected bike lanes on Healdsburg Avenue, north of downtown for a pretty long stretch, about 1.5 miles. So basically 2 lanes with a 2-way left turn lane, then a landscape median, then a 10-foot wide bike lane, then a sidewalk for a big stretch of that.
What's the northern endpoint?
From Powell, kind of like up by Simi Wine. I don't remember the name of the cross street, but well past our community center.
You need to get out more. Remember the names. I will just say on the raise application, Caltrans did get a debrief and on the Smart Windsor extension, and the debrief was so positive that they were heavily encouraged to resubmit the project. So that is what is happening. I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has them, but they're on track for a resubmittal without too much, actually without too much modification of the application.
Joanne, are you planning to submit any of your trail segments in Sonoma County for ATP or in Marin County?
Don't know that yet. I'm behind on submitting my stuff on the other applications to you and to into Caltrans. So my hands are a little bit full, so I haven't planned that far ahead. We didn't, last cycle, we supported the Santa Rosa application. And the cycle before that, we were recipient for regional share funds for the connecting pieces between Santa Rosa, Roanoke Park, and Petaluma and Pengrove, as supported by SCTA with the traffic impact fees. I think the answer to the question greatly depends on the ongoing litigation against the pathway by adjacent property owners.
Thanks for that, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, your hand's still up. I assume you just didn't drop it.
No, actually. So Joanne, so what's the raise grant then that is it, I guess I'm getting confused. It's like Caltrans is not submitting any. So what is the raise grant that my James referenced? So I don't know if I got that.
So it is the balance of the funds needed to complete the construction of SMART, both rail and pathway to Windsor. That project is 30% constructed, and because the regional Measure 3 bridge tolls were in continued litigation, that project was mothballed and has remained in a stasis position since about a year ago. So Caltrans selected that project to be one of its 3 official submittals to the 2021 RAISE program. There were 2 others. One was a planning project, and one was a Southern California project. So Caltrans is resubmitting all 3. I think, I'm not sure that they all, when you go through your debrief, Nancy, they'll tell you the process, which is their technical review, and then they do a 3-pot recommendation: not recommended, recommended, and highly recommended. And then you go through the special, the special portal to the secretary's office. We'll call it a portal. And so I believe that 2 of the projects were advanced into the secretary's review. One was not, but had friends in high places, so then it miraculously was. So, California, there were 750 submittals, 743 or something like that around the country. 84 of them came from California. 3 of them were official Caltrans submittals. And then I think overall 240 applications made it to the secretary review phase. And as you probably know, this time they have about 30% more funds to give out, 1.5 million instead of 1.5 billion instead of 1 billion. So Caltrans was encouraged by the reviewer, the debrief staff to resubmit. Does that answer your question, Nancy?
Yeah, thanks, Joanne, appreciate that. Sure. What's your shortfall?
So the project has, we've actually expended about $23 million, and we have secured grants. Oh, it might be 24 million. We have secured grants for almost 40 million right now, and we're trying to secure. Wait, I'm missing a piece. Sorry, I'm doing this from my brain, which isn't quite functioning today. We are seeking the 25 million out of RAISE, which is the same as last time. The project is probably going to have some escalation because of the 18 to 24 months it'll be sitting stagnant between when we mothballed it and when we're going to reactivate it once funding's secured. So there will be some construction escalation, and we don't really know exactly what that is yet. But with the RAISE ask, we will be fully funded. That's the plan.
Thanks, Joanne.
So anyways, great discussion. This is what I want this report to do, right? And I think it's helpful for all of us. And at SCTA, this is what we really want, is all the jurisdictions to be going after these outside fund sources. So thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Nancy, for sharing.
All right, with that, we will move on to item 9, SCTA, nope, sorry, item 10, SCTA, RCPA board meeting of March 14th.
My screen sharing.
Thank you, Drew. We are seeing your screen. So Drew is sharing the board packet with you so that you can see what the items are. I am having trouble with my screen because it's all split. I had it split so I could see everybody, and then I okay. So items going before the board that you might be interested in are the Measure M bond disclosure and Measure M appropriations limit. That's for SCTA, not for project sponsors. So it doesn't really apply to you guys, but you might be interested that it's going. And then we will be taking our Vision Zero action plan, final draft for approval to the board, and a landscaping strategy for the Highway 101 corridor. And we'll also be taking an RFP for project management and engineering support. There's the report out on future transit ad hoc, which is a standing item. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have any regarding the items that are going before the board this month.
Not seeing any questions. With that, we're on to item 11. Any other business comments, announcements from anyone?
Well, I have actually two announcements. I think I may have not mentioned this last month, but we finally filled our deputy director of capital projects after a long recruitment timeframe. So actually, Mike Prince, he used to work for Santa Rosa Water. He's an alumni, so he's back. So he is in that position. So we're all excited to have him back. Yeah, bye, Joanne. And so that changed. And then more recently, Jason Nutt, he is going to be transitioning into a full-time capacity as assistant city manager. So we will be recruiting for a director of transportation and public works. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Nancy. That was good news, although I did know about Mike having sat on 3 interview panels. Anyone else have announcements? Seeing none, we're officially adjourned at 2:31. May you all have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye.